Okay, so as we start this training program, the first thing that I always emphasize to my guys, my groups, is that we're not just weightlifting. We're not like all their buddies at the YMCA or the Wellness Center. We're strength training. We're training to decrease the probability of injuries. We're training to increase performance. And there's a lot of variables that come into play here other than just moving weight. Also considering that baseball, if it's not the most, it's one of the most asymmetrical sports out there, so there's a lot of opportunities to be injured, and we've got to address those issues in our training. First of all, I'm going to share with all the guys that this whole joint-by-joint approach to training, every joint where bone meets bone needs a level of stability. We're going to get those stabilizers turned on through training, but in terms of function, some joints in the body are designed for movement or mobility. Some joints in the body are designed for stability, and they got to understand that, because this is what leads to good functional movement that's going to produce good results in terms of performance and also keep the athletes healthy. So moving from the ground up with the athlete, here's a simple way to look at it. The ankle is a joint that needs mobility. It has a lot of capacity for range of motion. We want to get good movement out of the ankle. The knee is a joint designed for stability. It is a hinged joint, but we don't want it moving east-west or rotationally. The hip is a ball and socket joint that we want to get a lot of mobility from, obviously, and we'll find a lot of ways to train that. The lower back, the lumbar spine, those 5 vertebrae down there, those are that's a region of the body that is designed for stability. We don't want any movement out of the lumbar spine, the core region. We want everything we do for the core is for anti-rotation, anti-flexion, anti-extension. Moving up the chain, up the back, the thoracic spine, the 12 vertebrae above the lumbar vertebrae, they're smaller. They are designed for movement. We want rotation out of those vertebrae. We want to be able to extend out of those vertebrae, and that's how we can get that layback and we get good velocity throwing a baseball. To the east and west of the thoracic spine, you have the scapula, the shoulder blades. We want a good foundation of stability, a good base there for the rest of the shoulder to operate from. There's basically like a controlled mobility there, because there will be a natural glide to the shoulder blade, but we don't want it loose and weak. Then obviously the shoulder right here, the glenohumeral joint, is a joint that we want a lot of movement out of, but we got to address several stability measures with it as well. So those variables right there: ankle mobility, knee stability, hip mobility, lumbar stability, thoracic mobility, scapular stability, glenohumeral, the shoulder ball and socket mobility. Those are going to permeate all our training, and they're going to show up in the form of fillers. They're going to show up in all the movement patterns. Those functional movements have got to be trained very attentively. And when we go through strength training, the saying I use is we're not going to build strength on top of dysfunction. So if there's a dysfunctional movement pattern, like say in a lunge or a squat or some pattern, the lumbar is flexing and it's not supposed to, obviously, and the hips are not moving like they're supposed to, I'm not going to load more weight on them. I'm going to make sure that movement patterns are extremely clean and functional first, and then we can add weight once the patterns look clean. Don't add weight until patterns clean up, because you'll never be able to get back to square one there. All right, moving on. Your prep routine. The objective of the prep routine, obviously, is to warm the body up, but more importantly, you're working on movement pattern quality, and so there's that continuing theme of making sure that we're training good functional movement patterns, so again we can perform well and stay healthy and load strength on top of good patterns. During the strength training time, a couple considerations in a big team setting. If some of the guys are not able to get the exact load that they need to carry, lift, whatever it may be, for like a set of 8, say they have to go lighter, because I don't want them going heavier, but if they go lighter, then I don't want them just tacking on more reps. I want them basically to perform the accelerating phase of each movement, like a chest press would be the push pattern, with more velocity, because that's never a bad thing when training. The fillers, you'll see in the strength training video, are designed for active recovery in between strength training sets. They're not designed to overly fatigue the guys when they come off of a strength training set. They're just designed to enhance some form of mobility or stability, the good functional movement in between big strength training sets. So again, active recovery, so they're using it with a purpose. Travis, you remember how we set things up at Grissom where each lift, say it was like a chest press, followed by a filler, followed by a squat. Just for example, each of those spots roughly about a minute. So you've got guys in the working stations, the chest press, the squat. They basically got a minute to perform their sets. Whereas even the fillers, which is an active recovery, you got a minute, which the filler won't take nearly that long. So the first strength training program I'm providing here has 8 movements. You were able to go through each one 2 sets. You do the math there with the fillers. That's about 32 minutes on the clock, and you can manipulate that. We can talk more about that, but I'm going to leave that up to a little bit you finding what's best for your weight room with your kids. This very first program, it's got 8 movement patterns, 2 upper body push patterns, 2 upper body pull patterns, 2 lower body push knee dominant patterns where you're training more front side, 2 lower body pulling / hip dominant patterns where you're training more the back side for that balance. So if you want to get extra sets, always weight your extra sets more towards the upper body pulling and the lower body pulling / hip dominant sets, because naturally these kids, if they're on their own, they do a lot more pushing stuff, especially they do a lot more upper body pushing stuff, and we need to make sure the backside's trained. But again, very foundational movements in this first program for the first 3 weeks. It will progress into a little bit more aggressive movements once movement patterns are clean. Also, this first program, you'll notice we're putting the kids in a lot of unstable environments where there's 2 types of muscles. We got your stabilizing muscles and we got your big prime moving muscles, and it's an inverse relationship. So in this first program, we're tapping into more of those stabilizing muscles to get those turned on. And so the loads aren't really that big, so the big prime moving muscles aren't doing as much work. As we move through training, the next program, we'll put them in more stable positions where the big prime moving muscles can do more work and the stabilizers can just do their job that they're already on. So that's the idea. Again, be such a stickler on clean movement patterns, always emphasizing posture, shoulders back and down. No matter what they're doing, always emphasizing shoulders back and down. Let's not ever get to here. And again, encourage them to get uncomfortable. If they're comfortable, especially with all these single leg things, more than likely they're not really executing the way that they should. So that's a look at it. So you're getting, you'll go through the prep routine. Then you'll transition to strength training with the fillers, and you're also getting, you're getting the first 3 weeks of speed training. I also just kind of laid that out there because there's a little more teaching fundamental stuff in the first 3 weeks.